Well, well, well. If it isn't old horseworm Rogan. I'm glad you're well, man.
Bro, do I have to sue CNN?
Supreme victory.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? How you doing? Sorry for the poor quality. If it is poor quality, I'm still in between houses getting ready to move to Las Vegas. Sorry about that. I had to do it. I had to do it to you guys. But yeah, so I want to talk about Joe Rogan versus CNN. You know, a lot of people are calling Joe Rogan Joe Seabiscuit Rogan, Joe Warhorse, whatever, Clydesdale Rogan. It's just all the horse memes. I'm sure you guys know because of the Ivermectin thing. And that's just been a giant mess. You know, a lot of misinformation, a lot of crazy stuff going on, a lot of people mad on all sides of the spectrum, but we need to clarify everything. I mean, I'm not going to do the best job, but I'm at least going to walk you down memory lane of how we even got here. How we got to the point where Joe is thinking about taking legal action against CNN because of some stuff that they said about him when Joe got COVID. So we're going to start from the very beginning. So let's go back, I don't know, beginning of the year, a few months ago, something like that, when the pandemic is still raging on, when we all thought that it would probably be over by now. Vaccine hesitancy is the name of the game. I feel like there's a lot of people that are hesitant to still get a COVID vaccine for whatever reason. I feel like the only people who have like a legitimate excuse are like the religious people that are all like, oh, nope, you were not going to shake my conviction. I believe this and that, which sucks because, you know, they're putting themselves in danger and stuff. But at the same time, it is what it is. I mean, I was actually thinking about the Metallica documentary. I've seen so many. I don't know why I always watch Metallica documentaries, even when there's just like an origin story. When I know it, I guess it's like, oh, maybe I'll find out something different. But it always hits the same beats. And one of them is always talking about James Hetfield's mother, who passed away from cancer because she refused to treat it because of religious reasons. And so I think the same way about COVID, for example, and the vaccines and stuff, where a lot of people are just going to be like, nah, I'm good, son. And then they're like, yeah, you know, they're done. And so that sucks. So those people, I'm like, all right, it is what it is. But like everyone else, I'm kind of like, huh, what's the deal? Like, what's the reason? What's the reason for the hesitancy? So Joe Rogan's one of those people where he's like, he says he's not anti, but he's like, I don't know about this. It's all iffy. And to the point where I'm like, okay, fair enough, dude, whatever. But it's another thing when you kind of come out and you're like essentially giving people medical advice, where when he was talking about young, healthy people, like say in their 20s or whatever, should they get the vaccine, he emphatically said no.
If you're like 21 years old and you say to me, should I get vaccinated? I go, no. Are you healthy? Are you a healthy person? Like, look, don't do anything stupid, but you should take care of yourself.
And to me, I thought that was a little bit weird. Not only because are you giving medical advice when you're not, Joe Rogan's not a doctor, but it's just like one of those things where I'm like, hey man, you're a commentator in the UFC, and you know some of the fighters in the UFC, like they contracted COVID and stuff, and you know maybe they would have been better off if they had the vaccines and may have not have gotten it and stuff. Would have boosted their chances quite highly for not getting it, because you had like Khamzat Chimaev, for example, baddest prospect in the very long time, looked like he was gonna blaze through to smoke everybody in welterweight and middleweight. He got the virus, and then he just completely derailed to the point where he even retired early for a while because he thought he was never going to be the same, you know, spitting up blood in the sink and everything like that. But even after he recovered and said, I am going to fight, I mean, that fighting spirit of him wanting to smash everybody is just gone. He was going to fight like Leon Edwards, who is one of the absolute best in the world. He wouldn't accept a fight from Luke Rockhold, the former, you know, middleweight champion, who like for sure were like, oh, that would be a great fight. And he's like, I'm good. So what happened to this fighting spirit? You know, I think the virus took his fighting spirit. It took his soul. And I feel the same way about, like, say, Cody Garbrandt. You know, after he got it, he's not the same person. Former bantamweight champion. Now he's just getting beaten left and right. Doesn't seem to have a gas tank anymore. And I'm just like, wow, you know, crazy. This kind of stuff where I'm like, Joe Rogan's very close to. And so it's like, oh, it's really, I feel like it's really weird to kind of even give advice like that at all, you know. And there's the defense where he always says, don't listen to me, I'm a moron. But I'm like, people are going to listen to Joe Rogan because he's extremely influential. To the point where, I mean, he takes all these sponsors and stuff, and people believe in the stuff that he's saying. He has his own companies that he partners with, like on it and everything like that. And people are going to believe in his product. So why wouldn't they believe him when he says stuff like that? Right? That's going to happen. That's going to happen. So it's like, it's too late when you say, don't listen to me. People already listen. So the same thing's kind of happening with the Ivermectin, which we're going to inch closer to that because there's just a few other bumps and stuff. He was saying some other things that were very, iffy, like talking about certain things about the vaccinations again. And it turns out a paper that he was referring to had to do with chicken vaccines, and the dude that wrote it was like, "Hey, bro, you're misinterpreting my information. Please don't use this on your platform with millions upon millions of listeners, and you're misinterpreting. Like, please don't do that."
This study from 2015 has just recently blown up for all the wrong reasons. The study is about chickens, and it showed a vaccine that stopped chickens from dying but still allowed a virus to continue to spread freely between them. It ended up mutating into a deadlier virus, worse for the overall population. People like this toxicologist then applied that logic to COVID, coming up with the vaccinated people are making the pandemic worse theory. It spread on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And then it hit the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, where it blew up even more.
So many people vaccinated with a vaccine that doesn't kill off the virus. It actually can lead to more potent viruses.
To help explain the misconception, here's the guy who wrote it, Penn State biology and entomology professor Andrew Reed.
Yeah, I'm actually quite terrified that people could die because of the way my work has been misinterpreted.
First, Reed says vaccines don't cause viruses to mutate. Replication does. The more a virus spreads, the more chances it gets to randomly improve.
No shit.
I legitimately am not like a brilliant person, so I wouldn't be that bold to do something like that, because I would have to be sure I knew what I was talking about. And a lot of times I'm not sure when it comes to breaking down data and statistics and stuff like that, because a lot of times people just put whatever they want or they leave stuff out. They always try to come to a specific conclusion because that's what they want. It's not empirical. They're not trying to be objective. So a lot of times I'm like, is this sound information? The best source and the best way to go to is who wrote this shit. And so the guy that came out and he was like, no, please don't. please don't. So anyway, I digress on that. It got even weirder because Joe Rogan talked to Dr. Rhonda Patrick. Now, Dr. Rhonda Patrick's been on the podcast a ton of times, and it's one of those things where she's a brilliant doctor to Joe Rogan until she's not. So it's like, oh yeah, great advice. But then when you talk about, say, the lion diet or something where you're just eating all meat, I don't know. I'm not going to take your advice, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. But then now when they're talking about COVID and vaccines and stuff like that, she's not a brilliant doctor anymore too. So that was kind of happening too, and Joe Rogan said something that was really interesting, saying that, he's hasn't gotten COVID up to this point and he seems totally fine. And then a week later, that's when he got COVID.
So like either you're going to be vaccinated and not get it, or you might get it with Delta, and there's no telling.
Or you can be unvaccinated and not get it too.
That's not going to be the case for unless you're a hermit and never, it's eventually going to.
I've been exposed to it many times and I haven't gotten it. So I got back from the road Saturday night. I got up in the morning, got tested, and turns out I got COVID.
So now we're pretty much caught up. And so the whole huge thing with CNN and the uproar with a lot of people and where all the horse memes came in and everything is when Joe Rogan released a video on Instagram explaining that he got the virus, and how he treated it.
So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, Ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything. And I also got an NAD drip and a vitamin drip, and I did that 3 days in a row.
Now, a bunch of people took problems with the cocktail of drugs that he took for a numerous amount of reasons. Even myself, I'm kind of scratching my head that I'm like, oh, that's really strange. But let's focus on ivermectin first, because the biggest thing is there is a shortage of ivermectin for animals, right? For bovine, for horses and stuff, because it's a dewormer. A lot of people are just seeing the name ivermectin and then they're just grabbing that shit. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people don't have access to the human version, which there is a human version. And let's be clear, that's the one that Joe Rogan took. He got prescribed a human version. But here's the thing. You wouldn't know that right off the bat because he didn't clarify that in the Instagram video. So a lot of people are just like, oh, he took ivermectin and he seems fine now. I'm going to grab whatever ivermectin I can find. And that's what a lot of people are doing. You saw the charts skyrocketing for searches and people buying stuff online. People having shortages for their animals. Like, oh shit, I actually need this stuff and I can't get a hold of it. So you saw people getting the wrong stuff and taking the wrong stuff. Examples online, a lot of anecdotal evidence, right? Of people saying like, I took this, I took that, showing pictures of themselves injecting stuff, rubbing the stuff, ingesting stuff, like just going ham with it. And a lot of people are saying, hey, please don't take this. It's not for you. You are not a 2,000-pound animal. This is not for you, bro. Kind of crazy that you even have to say that, right? But a lot of people, they don't care. They're just desperate to protect themselves, and they're just so spooked out about the vaccination. So they're going to do things that are infinitely more dangerous, which is kind of a human trait a lot of times, where it's like, I will do the more dangerous thing just to skirt around the one thing that I'm afraid of. You know, it's an unfortunate thing. So that's like the biggest thing, where Joe Rogan was really mad about a lot of the coverage that CNN was giving. And then so he was like, oh, I think I'm probably gonna sue these. I think I might have to take legal action. I don't know.
I don't know. Do you?
They're making shit up. They keep saying I'm taking horse dewormer. I literally got it from a doctor.
Now, the weird thing a lot of people aren't talking about, and a lot of people that believe in the ivermectin thing, or people that are like, Joe Rogan's really irresponsible and all this stuff, it's like the biggest focus that I think everybody's kind of skirting over is the monoclonal antibodies. The one thing that he said that he took, the one thing that Trump took, it's the one thing that people that have money can have access to, and it seems like the thing that's really helping people, right? Regeneron. It's one of those things that like seems to be like, oh yeah, this can actually do some good, you know, and it's still going through trials. People are still, you know, still being experimented with, but I guess it's having some good results. So that's the thing that I feel like a lot of people should be focusing on when they're focusing on the ivermectin, which kind of sucks. But I also think this is also a failure of, like, say, people like Joe not really preaching about it, not really heavily focusing on that. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that out of the cocktail of stuff that Joe took, like the prednisone, which, you know, I have prednisone. I've been prescribed prednisone because I have inflammation. I have a herniated disc, and it lowers your immune system, right? Which, you know, your immunity causes inflammation. So it lowers your immune system, and it's dangerous. You should never be prescribed so many at a time because you don't want to lower it to the point where all this stuff starts attacking you, especially if you have a virus. Really dangerous to take prednisone while you have a virus ravaging your body. Really dangerous. Z-Pak, the antibiotic, wouldn't really do anything. Could help if you, say, get pneumonia or something after you've had COVID, like it ravages your system and then you get infected with bacteria or something. Then it can help with the viral infection, the bacterial infection. There's that. I think he took some other stuff. I mean, I know he like vitamin drips and all this other stuff. Like, oh, that's fine. You know, obviously, having vitamins is always a good idea. But it's just like this weird cocktail of stuff is just really strange, right? Really strange. But then you have the monoclonal antibody thing. It's like, oh, here's that one thing that seems to work. But here's the one thing that I want to focus on. Here's the last thing that I want to focus on. And it's the Regeneron, the monoclonal antibodies. It's funded by the same people that are funding the vaccines. You know, it's like Operation Warp Speed. They're trying to help people. And so here's the thing. For some people that are watching and listening right now, I would just want to say, think about that. Think about how Regeneron, the monoclonal antibodies, and some vaccines are funded by the same company. And if that's the case, when you always talk about follow the money, you always, like, if you see that there's a paper trail and it leads to like nefarious and evil things or whatever, spooky things, usually you want to stay away from all of it. So in this case, I feel like, what is the point of having the vaccine hesitancy when your excuse was like the trials and it's not approved yet and this and that, and you're saying the Pfizer's was approved too quickly and all this stuff, but then like the monoclonal antibodies, the Regeneron, that's cool, even though it's going through the same type of testing, the same trials and tribulations, not approved or anything like that, still just prescribed by doctors and stuff like that. I'm like, hey, try this out, this can help you out. So I'm like, what's the difference? Especially when the money is coming from the same location. So you gotta ask yourself these questions. And I feel like it kind of leads back to, I wonder who Joe Rogan's talking to or where he's getting his medical advice from and stuff. Because I feel like anyone worth their dirt, anyone who's really good at their job would let you know this. Like, oh, by the way, you know, this is coming from the same people. So I don't know, pick your poison. Unfortunately, we're in a really interesting timeline where if people are kind of giving things away for free so adamantly, people are like, I don't think I want it. It just seems weird. Like, I'd rather you charge me and make me go bankrupt, and then I'll believe you. It's a very strange, it's just kind of weird to be in that position, And as far as Joe Rogan suing CNN, I don't think anything would come of it. I feel like because of Joe Rogan not clarifying what type of ivermectin he took and seeing the large spikes of what's been happening with people buying the horse version, I feel like, what can you really do about that? I feel like when you have such a large platform and when you're talking to people, you have to kind of tiptoe about things when it comes to medical advice. You have to really be sure. You have to really be precise, and not just like, oh, this smart person sent this to me. That's not good enough. I know very smart people in my life. I know smart people that are related to me, but they can be completely stupid in other fields. Just because they're good at one thing, that doesn't mean that they're going to be like, it's like, oh, you're talking to these doctors, right, that are not epidemiologists. And so they don't know about this shit. But since they're really smart, you kind of just like, I'm just going to listen to them. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. Their credibility is on the same level as yours because they don't have a degree in that specific field. But I'm just saying, guys, it's been a wild ride. This ivermectin thing, I mean, it's disappointing and as wild and as weird as everything's been. I mean, at least we got some good memes out of it, right? But all right, you all take care. I'll see you in the next one.